Hey folks, welcome back. Okay, so pretty sure this is actually going to be my last video now, mostly because I am working here Friday evening just after work, and we're expecting a big snowstorm, about 1.5 to 2 feet, on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Now, I have had that much snow before. And you can see the remnants of some of it here. In fact, it's kind of cool, some of the patterns here it makes with the wind. Ice sublimates, it doesn't just melt. And if it is dry enough, as it is here frequently in Colorado, and windy enough, the ice will simply turn into vapor directly instead of melting. So when the wind picks it up off the edge and picks up the steam off the ice, which does actually happen even if it's cold, you get these really cool, like sand dune-y looking kind of wave patterns in it. But you can see what happens here is that, this storm was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It is now melted almost all the way down, but we got another big one coming in. And I am hard at work getting the house buttoned up. So I'll just look up the side here. You can see I've got sheathing up most of the side. And I've also been doing that around these two sides. So all the windows and doors are now boarded up here. I have 2 more walls to go. And then obviously some roof sheathing. So the reason I'm making this video is that I'm not sure that I'll get a chance to make one more. Next week is Thanksgiving week. When I go out, we're going to get that snowstorm here, and I probably won't be able to get back into the site for a little while. By the time I can, it'll be deep winter. And so my plan is to really try to close this up as much as possible this weekend. Now, as you can see, I'm not that far away from it. The area under my soffit here needs a little bit more sheathing. The reason there's a gap is that's a standard 8-foot wall, standard 8-foot sheet, but I got the sheet wrapped down onto the bottom of my rim board. And I did that on purpose. That's part of air sealing, and it's also part of just generally the structure. It kind of ties everything together. So I do need to patch in and fill the top area. Probably won't do that this season. Probably gonna just tarp it to keep some flying snow and rain out, and then I'll come back and deal with that next year. That's a narrow enough gap that a tarp should hold it fine, and I have plenty of tarp material left over, so I'll just staple that up there. What I'm working on right now, and the reason I'm making this video, is I've just hit a milestone, kind of a cool one. I am hanging my last rafter. So you can see there's one little gap over here. I've got my ladders and everything set up, and my lifting hoist, and part of the reason I'm making this video is to talk about some of the tools I'm using. I am a solo guy, not an experienced framer. Working with dimensional lumber tends to be heavier than your eye joists and everything else. Running all this stuff, 18 feet up in the air in high winds, heavy material. This is just something that would be out of my reach if I wasn't really smart about it. So it's the old Archimedes thing, if I could find somewhere to stand, and a long enough lever, I could move the world, right? Well, that's what I'm doing here. So let's take a look at that. First of all, you can just admire the deck is half finished. I got all the material here, but it's a low priority. I only honestly put that material down so I had something to walk on. And remember, I put the deck in originally because I needed these 3 posts to be where they are, set in their foundations, so that I can measure over and get a very precise fit when I put the ridge over to do the gable end that comes out here. So coming in the house, let's talk about some assistive devices. You can see we had 2 feet of snow in here, but I shoveled most of it, and it's pretty much all melted. And we don't have as many views as we had. As you can tell, I've been closing the area off, so I've got some more sheathing to put up. But how am I actually doing that? Well, there's 2 things that I'm mainly lifting that are really heavy. One is sheathing. Each sheet of sheathing weighs from 60 to 80 pounds, depends on the thickness. Some of the material is thicker than others, depends where it's going. And these rafters here are 2x10s. All this material is just really thick. 2x8s. All this material has a fair bit of weight to it. So how am I getting it up there and hanging all this and getting nice tight joints up there at the ridge? Well, the only way I can do that myself is with some help. And so you can see what I've got here is a boat winch from Harbor Freight. This is super sketchy, super sus. I'm not recommending this to anybody, but these winches are rated for about 500 pounds. And I mean, it's heavy for me, but it's probably only 100 pounds. So the boat winch is easily only 20% of its load capacity. And although I've got a pretty ghetto jerry-rigged pulley up at the top that is probably nowhere close to 500 pounds of strength, it's not having to lift the entire board because one end of it is going to rest over on the outside of the wall here. So it's really only lifting half the weight of the board, and only for about 2 minutes while I get it in place and get the top hanger nailed in and all that stuff tied together. So this is number one. It's a hand winch. this is working really well. These hand winches are a little crunchy. You know, the gears aren't super well cut here. You can see a little wear on the gear teeth, and that's because it just doesn't mesh super well. But it does the job. It's okay, and it's working out fine for me for right now. And I'm almost done, so it's not like it's getting a ton of use. Now, this method works really, really well. The only problem with it is that it's very manual. I'm going back and forth, you know, I raise it, lower it an inch, get the top end really nice and tight, and get everything fit right. And I'm just running back and forth, and hey, you want to see something cool? Go! Can you count them all? There's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or sorry, 7, 8, 9. This is our family of doe that live here. And I'm alarming them a little bit, so I'm going to step back away from the edge. But very cool to see how much wildlife we get around here. I just noticed them through the window. In any event, this is a very manual process. I've got to go back and forth between the ladders, get on the end, make sure my joints cut right, do all the rest of that. And then, you know, kind of come back here, crank it a little up, crank it a little down. So for other areas like the sheathing, I wanted something a little more automated. And this is what I came up with here. Now, this is an ATV winch screwed to a mounting block with structural screws. These are I think they're number 10s. They're rated as replacements for 1/4-inch lag bolts. So they're very strong screws, never had any of them let go. And you can see I have a whole bunch of them on a block. I've got that block mounted to another block, and that's mounted to the floor with more structural screws. Then I have this ghetto jerry-rigged kind of thing here with a battery. And this is not meant for this. I have a bigger battery, but this was all I had handy. That's actually a generator start battery. Here, you want to see something else cool? Sorry, I'm interrupting the video, but you don't get these things on a schedule. We are right over the flight path for a lot of the military flights for some of the Air Force bases here in Colorado. And what we've got is a flight of helicopters coming overhead right now. Guessing that's a Black Hawk, double rotor. And we'll get, you know, F-15s and all kinds of stuff going up through the valley here. And sometimes they'll fly very low right over the house. But yeah, anyway, little cool side effect. So, like I was saying, this battery here is too small for what I'm doing, which is okay. Generator start battery, I think it's 6 amp hours, but it's not drawing very much. I have a battery charger, and I've got it shoved over in the office right now just to keep it out of the weather. But I run the battery charger directly to the battery, so the battery charger is supplying most of the voltage. But, you know, a Victron, you can use it as a power supply. This is some cheap $30 generic off Amazon, and it needs a battery. It needs to see a battery before it will put out any voltage. So the battery charger is actually running the whole thing, but it needs a battery as sort of like a base voltage to wake itself up. So in any case, I've got this set up in here. You can see I don't have a fair lead or anything in front of it. I actually have one floating around on the floor here somewhere, but I didn't bother to install it. It's fine. I just kind of manually guide it. And then what I do is I've run a pulley up at the top there. That is a pulley on a swivel, so it can turn a little bit with the angle that I'm lifting. And what I'll do is I'll attach it to a little bit above where I need to lift something, run the cable up and over, and then I have a remote control for this. Now that lets me sit on the outside of the house, out of harm's way. I'm not getting up in the wind. I'm not carrying 80-pound sheets up a ladder in a 30-mile-an-hour blowing wind, in snow and ice no less. But what I can do is I can get up there and get the sheet in place within an inch or so of where I want, then get up on my ladder, kind of tweak it the last little bit and nail it off. And because of that, you know, you're supposed to have a gap. So, you know, that's not a completely tight joint. You might see a little bit of airspace in there. You're supposed to leave a 16th gap or an 8th gap between these sheets. So that is not an accident. That's on purpose. It's okay. It doesn't look like there's a gap here, but that's because this outer sheet is just covering the windows. This stuff's all going to be cut back out. So I just laid those items up there. They don't need to be tight where I've laid them. And what that lets me do is just kind of get my sheets up, get them placed, keep safe. I'm working alone out here, and like I'm saying, I'm rambling on a little bit, but these assistive devices are just really, really helpful. So you're going to see a lot of tips on YouTube about, you know, drive a nail in the wood and use your crowbar to pull twisted lumber straight. All that stuff's valid. All that stuff's great. What I'm showing you is the ghetto tips. if you're DIYing this, if you're an experienced framer, you're probably not watching this video. If you're DIYing this, you're probably looking at it and saying, well, why might I actually try the same thing, even though it's a terrible idea. But you can see I've got 74 pieces of rafter up in place now. Well, 72. I got 2 left to do, and I'm counting these as doubles. So there's 36 aside. You know, you double it, and it makes 72. Sorry. So you know, I've got all but the last 2 in place here. I'm going to get these last 2 nailed off and start on the roof sheathing. And it's going to work just like the wall. I'm going to get the rest of the wall sheathing up, trim that to match my my gable end here. And then I will come back through and probably work out some type of ramp here in the mudroom that goes up towards the roof, and bring the sheets, lay them against the ramp, and just run a winch from maybe the ridge or something down, and just winch them up the ramp and up onto the roof. That way I don't have to lift anything or carry anything or worry about falling. Just get up there, position it, nail it off where it needs to go, and Bob's your uncle. Anyway, thanks for watching. I will be returning in spring, and I've got another video too I may not have posted. So, you know, please stay tuned and like and subscribe if you want to see some more of this. And if you want to see the next very suspicious thing I do, just, you know, hit that follow button and you'll see it. Thanks for watching, and have a great winter.